exclusive. Russia says Baghdadi killing faked by US, part of new move against the region by deep state updating. Russian intelligence says US moved Baghdadi to Iraq, then faked his death. Is Baghdadi living with Epstein? The Russian Defense Ministry has no reliable information about US servicemen conducting an operation to yet another elimination of the former Daesh leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi in the Turkish-controlled part of the Idlib de-escalation zone. Military spokesman Major General Igor Konashkev said. Russian intelligence inside Siberia reported that the S-400 radar system, which cover Idlib, saw no American aircraft over the area when the Baghdadi raid was claimed. The Russians are very disappointed with Trump and say the US is putting Idlib's huge Al-Qaeda force under joint command with a newly formed ISIS under American protection in Iraq and newly occupied area of Syria, where American forces just took over even more Syrian oil assets from private source. America sees its big failure inside Iraq in what was the US, Israeli and Saudi Arabia created ISIS. They did so while Syria, with the exception of Kurdistan, was united. Now they are fostering a civil war first, then a new ISIS, and then the Kurdish region of Iraq is under nearly complete Israeli control. Baghdadi is part of this process, using the personal influence in Iraq's Sunni community. Russia has given Trump too much rope. Remember that in May 2018, the US claimed to have killed 300 Russian contractors who were moving with Syrian forces to secure the same oil fields in Deir ez-Zor. Russia allowed the US to move American oil companies into Syria, then were blackmailed to look the other way while Syrian oil was looted. In order to maintain some American cooperation and to limit US operations against Damascus from US, Saudi and Israeli bases in the US occupied zone in southern Syria, a zone America still holds and still plans to use to keep Damascus under direct threat. From Russia Today moments ago, Russian defense minister said the US coalition didn't even carry out any airstrikes in Idlib recently. Earlier, Trump made a rare Sunday address from the White House informing the world that al-Baghdadi was eliminated in northwest Syria, in a daring nightmare raid with the involvement of US special forces, planes, helicopters and drones. The Islamic State, IS, former ISIS, leader met his end, crying and screaming in the face of America's might, he said. But the Russian Defense Ministry insisted that there were legitimate questions and doubts about the very fact of the US operations and especially its success. It is also rejected that Trump's claims that Russian forces opened up the airspace under its control in Syria to American planes to facilitate the operation against the IS leader. Moscow pointed out that it recorded no US coalition airstrikes in Idlib area in northwest Syria on Saturday when the raid was held. The ministry questioned the very possibility of al-Baghdadi's presence in Idlib, as the area is held by Al-Qaeda offshoot Jabhat al-Nusra, who was also been mortally enemies of Islamic State. French Defence Minister Florence Parly also questioned the significance of the claimed US achievement, pointing out that the raid only marked an early retirement for a terrorist, al-Baghdadi, but not for his organisation. Moscow noted that Islamic State was crushed in Syria in early 2018 in a joint effort by the government in Damascus and the Russian forces, meaning that yet another report of al-Baghdadi's demise bears no effect on the operations situation in Syria or on the actions of the remaining terrorists in Idlib. We have been told by Moscow only moments ago that Baghdadi is alive, healthy and working with the US and in Iraq. The information is exclusive, directly from the high-level intelligence sources who are also right, and VT has proven time and time again. What we don't know is whether Trump is lied knowingly, something he does continually anyway, or is simply being handled. Now that Trump's withdrawal from Syria has been reversed and all the troops sent to Iraq have now returned to Syria, 100% of them just redeployed to Deir ez-Zor from Haska, his peace move is now exposed to a total fake. More on that in a bit as to why and what the deep state has in store for Syria and Iran. Additionally, our sources inside Syria and Iraq tell us that Bagdadi has moved from Turkish protection across the Euphrates and is now with US military intelligence inside Iraq. This kind of thing isn't unusual, as fake terrorist leaders built up by phony intelligence and the information infotainment industry are a valuable commodity. Let's get the whole story first. The deep state is running a four-pronged attack, beginning in Hong Kong to pressure China toward making concessions, not on trade but on currency and banking, where China with other non-allied partners threatened the Rothschild world banking system run through SWIFT, with a secondary trade system and new currencies, including crypto, challenging the endless fake crypto pump and dump, and has already poured billions into organised crime coffers. Planning here is left to Google Corporation and Facebook, the de facto organisations heart of the deep state and their AI compatibility. We are fearful for Mark Zuckerberg, as due to his recent arrogance before Congress, he has become an embarrassment and may well be in personal danger, something that would break the hearts of any person who loves and admires deep state roads. From Hong Kong, the mechanism that formerly organised colour revolution and blamed them on George Soros began the Indian-Israeli crackdown on Muslim inside Kashmir and attacks on Pakistan. Pakistan's border crossing north of Kashmir has been attacked also, but that this project is a provocation against Imran Khan trying to weaken his reform movement. Thousands of Indian troops are being fed into Kashmir, where their people are dragged out of their homes and beaten in the streets. India's revenge against hundreds of years of Muslim and British rule. Behind this, however, is an arms race between China and India, where Russia continually feeds technology to India, which keeps vulnerable contracts with China coming to Moscow. The problem behind this is that Israel has been manufacturing ICBMs in India, installing them in facilities that the US has built inside Israel. ICBMs capable of hitting North America unless useless against Iran. There are missiles that could simulate a nuclear first strike on the US from Russia, just like 9/11 simulated an Islamic terrorist attack on the US. This is all a creation of the fruitful mind of Benjamin Netanyahu. The next step was in Lebanon, where very real demonstrations against a weak government are now being taken over, as in Ukraine, with agent provocateurs adding to violence and Saudi paid, and we may mean thousands fake demonstrators trying to retarget anti-government demonstrations against Hezbollah. Hezbollah's intelligence service have traced all of this down and will likely retaliate against those involved in the Israeli-Saudi plot. Hezbollah, after years of fighting against the deep state attempt to overthrow Syria and destroy Iraq and Iran, is now one of the most formidable military forces in the world, trained and armed by Russia and highly experienced. This is all coordinated with recent moves in Baghdad riots that have killed nearly 100 that in reality should be demonstrating against ISIS, US KRG, Turkish threat of nearly half of Iraq's oil reserves since 2014 and nearly 1.5 trillion during the US occupation, which has led to a cascading economic disaster and off the scale unemployment for years. A US-backed puppet government still rules Iraq, while commercial and economic life within the nation have left it a hollowed-out shell, with all cash moving to Dubai's banks while Iraq rots. The Baghdadi move is coordinated with Lebanon and Baghdad uprisings, now seeded and controlled by deep state, and the rise of the new ISIS fed by revenue from stolen Syrian and Iraq oil. See Gordon Duff's analysis, filmed only hours before the Baghdadi announcement from the Press TV interview. Then on October 26, 2019, Russia announced that their satellite images confirmed the US operations stealing Syrian oil. From Sputnik News, Russia, citing satellite imagery, says the United States has been smuggling Syria's oil to other countries under the protection of its troops before and after the defeat of the Daesh Tafiki terrorist group in the region. Russian Defense Minister spokesman Major General Igor Koshnovikov said on Saturday that the space intelligence images show that oil was definitely extracted and massively exported for processing outside Syria under the reliable protection of US troops before and after the defeat of Daesh terrorists. Konoskov stressed that the convoys were guarded by US private military companies and special operation forces. And then this: Russia concerned over US military returning to northern Syria. Commenting on EPSPA's statement that some US troops will remain in northeastern Syria, Russian Defense Ministry spokesperson Igor Koshnovikov said that the statement did not come as a surprise. What Washington does know, the capture and holding under its armed control of the oil fields in eastern Syria, is simply speaking international states banditism. He stressed, adding that Syrian oil reserves and other mineral resources belong solely to the Syrian Arabic Republic, not to Daesh or to American protectors from Daesh's terrorists. He also said that neither international law nor the American legislation itself can justify the US troops' goal to guard Syrian hydrocarbon reserves from Syria itself and its people. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov suggested that the fresh contradictory signals of the US has sent regarding Syria may indicate Washington's desire to maintain conditions that allow for continued pressure on Damascus. We are very definitely worried that the signals from the White House may reflect the same attitude, to preserve the condition for the continuing multi-component pressure on the legitimate authorities in Damascus. He pointed out, adding that this is the moment we don't agree and we can't agree with the United States on this situation. We are actually seeing is not something far more sinister. You see, when Iraq is pushed to a civil war, and this is what is being done right now, orchestrated out of Israel-controlled northern Syria, or as it's called, the Kurdish regional government in Erbil, coordinated with US forces inside Iraq and Syria, a new ISIS is being built to justify more American troops inside Iraq. To do this successfully, a new and more controlled US-backed government must be installed over the current puppet regime in Iranian influence erased through another fake colour revolution, as is being attempted right now. From these, of course, a war on Iran can be staged. Iraqi oil reserves can be stolen to finance it, and ISIS can be reconstituted as the US moves ISIS leaders that it has been keeping in training camps in Kurdish regions of Syria and recently escaped into new US-controlled zone of the Syrian-Iraqi border. Then, of course, Mosul will be retaken, joined with Erbil, and Mek terror group will return to partner with ISIS, and a new decade of war will be ensued.